Hello, everyone. My name is Chet Monday, and welcome to the March for Science Facebook page for a very special live stream with Ayisha Siddiqa. Now, Ayisha and I met back at COP26 and a few times around there, I think. She's also going to be joining us in Dallas for EarthX 2022 this coming week, which we are very excited about. So I wanted to bring her on just to learn more about her and what she's gone through to get into this world. So I'd love to know a little bit about your background from your perspective, Ayisha.
Hi, Chet. It's so nice to be. Yes. I got involved in the climate movement for two main reasons. Island, which is at the bottom of Brooklyn, and in 2012, we had a very big hurricane that affected Black and Brown people disproportionately, including the community of Coney Island. And so, to this 9-ish years later, they're still on construction projects, trying to fix the damage that was done. But our community is still very much in New York City and state. I feel like sometimes the afterthought of climate resiliency, although it's the front of it. And then I am Pakistani. I was born there. I come from a tribal community in northern Punjab, and taking care of the earth is the belief set that I was raised upon. It is a part of my upbringing. And when our community was polluted, when specifically started being full of chemical toxins, it affected the impact of my family. I joined the climate movement. Around me has been affected by it, and I couldn't just sit and watch it continue.
For sure. So, amazing story of what kind of inspired that passion, and how have you seen that passion manifested in your work? Kind of when you enter the climate space, which is a big thing and often intimidating for someone who wants to get involved. Where have you seen yourself go towards? What kind of organization movements that you have felt have been great to work within to make actual change?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. I initially joined through Extinction Rebellion and then Fridays. I think that the Fridays for Future framework is doing in the context of like making climate change a part of mainstream and making the urgency accessible. However, I found that some things that the youth movement was not taking into account, specifically naming of the fossil fuel industry and pointing out the damage has done to communities like mine and also the environmentality. And in 2019, a little bit out of with the United Nations and also the movement focusing specifically on people's future, on the historical things that have led to Black and Brown suffering the most. I started but the groups that I've found most inspiring to work with have been groups that are on, in New York at least, food education, mutual aid, and in times of disaster, first people who will respond to people's need, food, clothing, etc., etc. And I think like being in those spaces where you can immediately help people have me feel better. Yeah.
100% hear that. I think a lot of people, when entering the global climate movement, it's well, as I said, it's huge, but they tend to neglect the local aspect of personal advocacy and where you come from and your community and how to support them best. So I love that you touched on that. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about where you spread yourself in terms of local advocacy, as you mentioned, and then national or international. How do you see those things being a part of your work, if they are at all?
Yeah. Local advocacy. So this is something that I broadcast. Me and my friends started a garden. We've been working on it since then, and like the food that comes out of it, we put it in um, local refrigerators that are available to anybody who wants to take that food. So it meant a lot of hands-on learning. We grow tomatoes, cucumbers, you name it, basil, like a lovely potluck, and that actually makes me doing that kind of work. And there's no theater behind it, which sometimes a lot of activism is. And then internationally, I think a little bit on Polluters Out. So we are a youth coalition that is asking and the UNFCCC to sign a conflict of interest policy with the fossil fuel companies, so that fossil fuel interests cannot affect the policies that come out of COP. The reason why this work international is so important is because it extends beyond the physical influence that the fossil fuel industry has, but it goes down into the nitty-gritty in the sense that fossil fuel industry's presence, its money, its tactics damage environment legislation. They prevent things like carbon taxing, the cessation of new pipelines, ban on injections of toxic waste into the Arctic. The fossil fuel industry is really preventing that at the international level. So much that the Paris Climate Agreement, there have been aid and there's been influence so that the words fossil fuel, oil, and gas are not explicitly stated as a problem-causing agents of the climate crisis. And we know that 70% of greenhouse gas emissions come from the fossil fuel industry. So if we can't name them, how do we expect to get anywhere in terms of policy? And that's been a lot of my work. It's been about educating, and Polluters Out. We have had multiple campaigns about the damage the fossil fuel industry is doing to policies, the damage it is doing to local communities. And I think, yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, that is, yeah, outstanding. I mean, this is one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on today, because it takes so much awareness and dedication and care to understand that you can be working at a local level to aid the outcomes of what's happening at the highest level. And so to understand, to spread yourself so that you can to work on all of those facets is so important. And that being said, I'd love to talk a little bit about for our kind of last question. Obviously, you're at COP26, and I saw you there. I'd love to hear your impression of being there, and obviously, I'm sure you'll hit on the presence of the oil and gas industry and fossil fuel industry at COP26. And then after that, could you talk a little bit about how you would hope to see it at COP27?
Yeah. So before COP26 even took place, the COP host and president, Alok Sharma, had multiple closed-door meetings with fossil fuel executives, including Shell, Exxon, fourth, sixth, and seventh biggest polluters. At the conference of the parties, money, don't know about money because I cannot prove it, but sponsorships came from groups like huge plastic polluter, Adidas, and Nestle. And these advertisements or these sponsors' names were plastered everywhere. At pavilions supposed to represent nations, to stage where people were speaking, and in the blue zone, banner running all the time with groups names that were sponsoring or in, and it included Google, it included Nestle, like I mentioned. A video, I can refer to it, but it was absolutely shocking. The biggest conference to address climate change had relationships, ties, and physical affiliation with that were actively damaging communities. And that felt like more than just a conflict of interest. Felt like all the work that Black, Brown, and Indigenous activists were doing was not actually being considered at the highest level. We were the thing about the United Nations is this is a meeting of people from everywhere. So firstly, like when there's a lack of diversity at the United Nations, one has to ask, if the UN can't be diverse, where can there be diversity? And the other thing, it is not like there weren't Indigenous people, Black and Brown activists there could have been on said stages or informed you that what is happening around us is wrong. We just weren't offered the opportunity. We weren't offered space on the main. And this is all occurring like so fast at such big capacity. I think I made a statement, and it was that everything that is caused to be in this climate crisis, all the agents, if you want to know where they are, or like if you want to see them act, go to COP. You will watch it happen. 500 fossil fuel lobbyists are there. Activists are protesting, they're out. If they're not getting kicked out, they're being silenced. You're not allowed in. The UN has a different set of rules and laws than the UK government. You cannot name Shell, or like you cannot say those people's names in protest being prevented. Outside the doors, there were hundreds of people organized, and like the visual representation of like the have-nots and the people who do was so painful. For COP27, I know that it is occurring in Northern Africa, Egypt. There is diversity, and then there is equity. And my visions of COP27 is not that people are and their like faces are plastered all around media, and then they're removed from the stage. It happens before they come or leave. I hope that the Egyptian government and the larger Middle East is willing to hear where it could do better. And I think that the climate change and like people are taking action is due to the constant resilience of the movement at large, the youth and the adult and indigenous. And it's because we have refused to say anything but the truth. It's not censored.
Absolutely. I have the same hopes, and as we had a conversation before this live stream about hoping that also it's not as influenced by another huge area of fossil fuel production that has powerful governments, especially as we were talking about Saudi Arabia and how proximity can equate sometimes to influence in terms of these events. But as we head into our event next week, we'll be talking a lot about how to alter that process from the inside and the outside, and how to come together as a youth movement, as an indigenous movement, as an adult movement, to address these issues and to create a different reality for COP instead of the blatant programming of inequity and distrust. So I think that's about time for us today, but I am so excited to see you in Dallas next week. And thank you again for joining me, Ayisha. Is there anywhere that you can send audience members to follow you, Polluters Out, or support y'all in the moment?
Yeah, please go to website, that's www.pollutersout.org. At the moment, we are not onboarding more people, but where we could use your help is in financial sponsorship. Internationally, BIPOC activists and organizations receive less than 1% of all environmental and funding. And so this is what keeps it going. And then in regards to myself, I can be found on Instagram and Twitter at Ayisha_SID.
Perfect. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. And thank you, Ayisha. Go follow Polluters Out. Try to become a fiscal sponsor. That is so important, as you said, for funding for organizations like this that are doing amazing work. And other than that, everyone have a great day. And thank you again.